Hello, welcome to Sit and See. I'm Dr. Jared Jones. My research specialties are ancient systems of meditation, the cognitive science of meditation, Buddhist philosophy, and the philosophy of science. This series is an almost daily series. I may be scaling it back a little bit in the near future just based upon demand, but we shall see. And in Sit and See, what we do is come together, do a bit of practice, and I answer questions that people have about the meditation techniques that I teach and meditation in general. So that is about it. For those of you who are new to this series, although tough to imagine how someone would be new at this point, I I've been on a bit of a mission to help people understand how to train in meditation in real life, which is a bit different than training in meditation in retreat or in an intensive environment. And the types of meditation that I teach, I call the five foundations. On these foundations, five cognitive skills of meditative practice, you can learn basically how to transform more and more of your activities into actual meditative practice. So that's why we're gathered here. I usually take a few questions in the beginning. We do some practice and then wrap it up for the day. So if you're just arriving for the first time, welcome. Otherwise, welcome back. So, if there are no questions early on, what I tend to do is just talk about what's on my mind in regards to meditation. Because I've been working a lot with Neil Ripsky and some of his senior students and the 18 Lohan Palm course, it's been quite interesting to see. Today we had our first class that was combined 18 Lohan and my meditation material. And it was quite interesting to see how martial artsy folks who've done some training and other things, how they took to the first technique, and it seemed to go quite well. Seemed to go quite well. Everywhere I go, in particular, teaching the first foundation, this technique of really intensively trying to bring your mind to the breath, I find people respond to it very, very well because it reveals to you what your mind's, uh, mm, generally speaking, it reveals to you how poor your mind is at focusing, really. Even if you've been meditating a long time. So, yeah, that was interesting. We had a class like that today, very much along those lines. Right. Well, since there aren't questions coming in, we might just jump straight into practice because I'm a little bit beat up today. So, for those of you who are new, uh, I think we'll just jump into the second technique that I teach, but I'm going to teach it in a seated position. Welcome, Ty. And we'll go from this. We'll probably just do this practice today and then call it a day because I'm not feeling great. Okay. So just find a position where your spine is relatively straight. And we're going to go through a body scanning practice. So when I say place your mind in such and such part of the body, what I mean is, in particular, with regards to tactile sensation, you want to try to draw all of the bandwidth, all of the, if you were to think of it by way of analogy, right now you have a camera pointed at your tactile sensation, a mental camera pointed at tactile sensation, and it's zoomed out. It's zoomed out in such a way that if a new sensation occurs in your fingertip or at the on the back of your neck, etc., that you're going to see whatever happens there. And when I say place your mind in a particular area, what I mean is zoom in. to that area so that the rest of your body is no longer in the frame of awareness. So you want to zoom in all of your attention, or as much of your attention as you can, to the area that's being mentioned. And then when you get there, don't imagine anything, don't visualize anything, don't adjust anything. Again, a bit like a camera that's been zoomed in, simply record whatever happens to be there. You're not analyzing, you're not looking around, you're just observing with a calm, quiet mind, experiencing what's actually there in the place where the mind has arrived. Likewise, since we're focusing on tactile sensation, you don't have anything to do with your eyes. You don't have anything to do with your ears besides listen to the instructions. You don't have anything to do with smell or taste. And you have very little to do with your mind. The only thing you need to do with your mind besides listen to the instructions is to do your best to apply the instructions, in particular, in terms of limiting your awareness of the body to the place that's being mentioned as part of the exercise. Welcome, Dave. Welcome, 108. So, once again, with the mind a little bit like a mirror or like a video camera, you're just going to become aware of the tactile sensations in the places that are being mentioned. And let's start with the toes on both feet. And do your best to zoom in completely so that the rest of the body becomes a little bit numb or disappears entirely, if possible. To the balls of your feet, arches, and the tops of your feet, heels, ankles, calves, knees, eyes, hips, Front and back of your pelvis. Tailbone. Anus. Perineum. Sexual organs. Now the lower part of the waist. Then the diaphragm region. And the chest. Shoulders. The bicep region. Elbows. Forearms. Wrists. Palms. Fingers. Now the lower third of your neck, middle third of your neck, upper third, a joint between the neck and the skull, and your whole skull except for the top. And then the top of the skull. Okay, great. Any questions for the day? Okay. Well, I know it was a bit of a short one, but like I said, I'm a little bit beat up today. Bit of a bit of a long couple of days. Very good. All right, my friends. Well, it was good to see you, and we shall pick it up tomorrow. Actually, I can respond to that. Yeah, that's quite common. there's even amongst Buddhists, there's a pretty a pretty poor level of education, broadly speaking. Um, Not exactly sure why that is. I think, some, like a number of cultural Buddhists across Asia, for example, they're Buddhist by birth, a bit like a person being, I don't know what a good example is, but you know, people who are born into a religious tradition, quite often you do the ceremonies and you have someone from the religion come to officiate the wedding and the funeral and so on and so forth, but you don't spend a lot of time learning the religion. And then, so popularly, what's known and said uh, around Buddhism, besides amongst the clergy, so to speak, to put it in Christian terms, is sort of not great. And then in the West also, there have been a few, I would say, partial and inadvertently poor transmissions of Buddhism into the West. So the modern mindfulness movement is an interesting example where both deliberately and by accident, a fair amount of Buddhism was stripped out of Buddhism to create modern mindfulness and Vipassana style meditations, both of a Buddhist kind and of a secular kind in the West. And similarly, Zen, when it came to the United States in particular, in the early years, not universally, but the most popular forms of Zen, it seems to me, weren't complete in their teachings. If you go and you look at what a sort of a Zen environment looks like even today in general, in Japan, it involves a much more rigorous and diverse set of learning materials than was taught to people in the West, as far as I can tell, because much of the ethical teachings were missing, much of the teachings beyond this lifetime were missing, et cetera, despite the fact that the, even the Four Noble Truths contain these ideas, which is the first teaching of the whole system, right? And so some very strange ideas got communicated to the West. And then furthermore, even amongst those teachings Zen in Japan, there has been an attempt on the part of religious leaders and secular leaders in Japan over the last 100 years or so to make Zen less religious, to make the country more modern. And likewise in China, there's been an effort by secular powers in China to make Chan Buddhism, which is sort of the mother of Zen in Japan, you could say, to make it more secular. And so, mm, you know, if you're looking at teachings coming through those streams, they tend to have less of the content that really makes Buddhism stand up to the challenges of modern philosophy, modern thought, other religious ideas, as you well know, if you're if you're a relatively educated Christian, Christians have very sophisticated arguments for their positions if you talk to really well educated Christians. And Buddhism can't stand up to those in the form that it's generally communicated to Western audiences, at least. But I think also audiences in Asia, based upon the feedback I've been getting. I think people are hungry to have, first of all, a full presentation of Buddhist ideas put forward, and secondly, to have those ideas put forward in such a way that they are vigorously defended by reason and things that can be gone at with direct experience. Because in general, this is what Buddhism has done for thousands of years. So let me finish the bit on Christianity, and then I'll come back to you, Lang. So I've actually trained in theology. My master's degree was a taught program at University of Roehampton University in London, and so I got to read a number of the great theologians and be exposed to some very, very good modern theologians as well, not just the historical ones. And frankly, there's things there that would be interesting to Buddhists because both Buddhists and Christians have to grapple with issues of free will, issues of omniscience, because we say the Buddha is omniscient, um, issues of the relationship between compassion or love and power in embodied within one being who's also omniscient. So these are very very interesting issues that we Christians and Buddhists could have a very nice dialogue in this area. Yeah. So yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind. I'm not a big debater, you know. Like I'm more a kind of a classic academic. I like to sit around for a few weeks and think about something. I'm not so quick on my feet. The trained debaters, like it's a whole set of skills you have to have. So I'm not super keen on you know that kind of debate. But yeah, I mean, just in terms of the intellectual style, I think there's, like I said in a couple of the videos, there's some really interesting arguments in Buddhism. For example, the idea that causality is infinite into the past. And a Christian theologian might argue, or some philosophers might argue, well, then don't you have the problem that you can never arrive at the present moment? Well, no, you don't, because we've never been anywhere other than the present moment. We were never waiting around somewhere for the present moment to catch up with us. So we don't have the problem of having to wait an infinite number of moments to arrive at the present moment. We've always been in the present moment. So we don't have that problem, right? So there's a number of proper responses to the most popular kinds of arguments against these ideas that you find in other places. You know, the other thing is the argument from necessity, where a Christian would argue, well, if everything is contingent, you need something non-contingent to explain how it all gets started. But um, an infinite causal sequence doesn't get started, right? It is, in the same sense as an eternal deity, it is a necessary being. It's not something that could have failed to exist because it doesn't depend on any outside causes. It's an infinite causal sequence into the past. It doesn't get going at some time in the past. And therefore, just like a creator deity, it doesn't require an explanation for how it got there in the first place. There was no first place. So this is yeah, I mean it might. I mean the kalam is quite good in a number of ways, but it makes some suppositions like, well, if there was nothing, then how do you end up with something? Well, God is also a something. So even from a Christian point of view, there was never nothing. So if the question is why is there something rather than nothing, you're stuck with the exact same question, actually, if you say there's a God as opposed to no God. So in the Buddhist case, you have an infinite causal sequence that's a necessary being that doesn't rely upon anything other than what we have at our fingertips right now, which is conscious beings, well, maybe not quite at your fingertips, but the karma of conscious beings, which is part of the thing that bridges physical reality and conscious beings, and then physical events. And so these run infinitely into the past. This universe has a beginning, but this universe came from previous instances of conscious beings, karma, and universes. And so this is how we end up with uh, the current universe. And so this actually works, right? Welcome, David. Okay. Infinite recursion. Okay. I don't think anyone in my space is doing what I'm doing. I think it'd be very interesting to have a discussion with Gavin Ortland. I like God logic a lot, actually, as a person. But like I said, I'm not much of a formal trained debater. You know, that takes a whole set of skills. I'm totally up for, kind of friendly discussion, but in terms of actually addressing arguments and so forth, I like to hang out and marinate on things for a while and then respond after thinking about them. Okay, there was a question. Okay, so in terms of dealing with pain, and then this will be it because like I said, it's got to be a short one today. In terms of dealing with pain, the best thing to do, which is why I put it as foundation two in the techniques that I teach, is body scanning. So, body scanning meditation has been shown in cognitive tests, cognitive scientific tests, to do two things. One, it makes pain less painful. So, to put in other terms, body scanning meditation makes your pain tolerance increase. So if your pain tolerance increases, then this means that your comfort with the amount of pain that's in the body will go up. Your body gets more comfortable. Secondly, it actually, according to cognitive scientific tests and I think phenomenological sort of what is it, self-reporting, the amount of pain also goes down. So since the amount of pain goes down, the body gets more comfortable. So you have two things working together. The amount of pain is actually going down according to your brain scans, and also the amount of pain tolerance is going up. So by doing body scanning, not only does your nervous system become very calm, which allows you to enter a state of concentration that's much more profound, much more quickly, but it's also increasing pain tolerance and decreasing pain, which will allow you to sit longer, right? So this is why I put it as the second technique in the system. Once you have a little bit of concentration, then you can do body scanning at a really nice level. Once you do body scanning at a kind of a nice level, right? Then you can start doing uh then the concentration will start to get deeper and you'll want to sit longer. To sit longer, the body needs to be comfortable. So body scanning is naturally the second technique for a number of reasons like this. Okay. Yeah, I'll answer that question since you made a donation to the channel. It's very nice of you. I'll answer that real quick and then I should run because I'm a little bit beat up today, like I said. Uh, okay, interesting. Some interesting advice in the channel chat there. Uh, I'm sorry to hear that, Jay. It's quite difficult. It's quite a difficult thing to deal with. But if you're in an environment where you're seeing this sort of thing, then if that's within your work environment every day, then yeah, it can be a powerful sort of tool for your rumination practice. In fact, there are monks in Thailand who go and they look at dead bodies and things like this. I hope this doesn't offend anyone. But when it comes time to do their rumination on the fact that you're going to die one day, they go and they look at corpses, right? And there's a number of benefits to this practice as long as you don't start getting depressed and don't start getting weird about death and all of this, because that can also happen. So you need to avoid that when you do those practices. Okay, so very quickly, very briefly for the Anglican wingaling. Ah, thank you, Red Scare. So just very quickly, Buddhist salvation theory. So it depends a little bit on who you ask. A little bit depends on who you ask. So I'll tell you what I think rather than going through everyone's positions. I think I agree with the Chinese Buddhists that by logical necessity, because we've been here infinite time, it must be possible for some beings to never attain realization. And also mathematically, if you think about sentient beings, there are some sutra sources that say that actually sentient beings are infinite in number, which means it's quite interesting in terms of the math that if a single being attains realization, the probability, or even though the probability has increased that you're going to get out of samsara, the relative probability stays exactly the same as it was because it's being divided by an infinite number. And so, in an important sense, it actually only matters who the people that are in your orbit. You know, who knows how many that is, but let's say that there's like 50,000 or 100,000 or a million sentient beings that are sort of in your rebirth orbit. The ones that are very close to you, if they attain awakening, this has a much bigger effect on your ability to get out of the problem because now one person in your immediate circle is no longer contributing to the problem and is actively working as hard as they can to get everyone who's in their immediate circle of cause and effect out of the problem. So, as a small example, not that I'm a great being or anything, but here I am, I'm one person, and there are now, who knows, 100,000 people or so, maybe more, who, because I've done a little bit of work, now have a little bit of benefit that they didn't have. And they're not just Buddhists, it's people from all sorts of backgrounds who are now have a little bit more benefit. And potentially, from what I can see at least, people seem to be taking some of the tools that I've laid out and they're using it to be better Eastern Orthodox practitioners and better Jewish practitioners and better Sikh practitioners and so on and so forth. And of course, this makes me very happy, you know. So like this, uh, like this, I think the theory of salvation is actually that in theory, on the one hand, everybody should be able to get out. We all have the potential to get out. In actuality, based upon the mathematical division of sentient beings, the fact that we've already been here for an infinite time means that it should actually be the case that it's possible to continue infinitely without getting out of the problem, which which actually makes this opportunity exceedingly rare. The opportunity where a sentient being like ourselves in going through infinite rebirths encounters the information that might get them out of suffering forever when they could have remained in it forever, right? It makes the probabilities quite weighty, quite important in a way that in a sense they would be only slightly less important, but in some people's minds critically less important if there was the potential that you could get out as long as you just hung out long enough. So, like this, we all have the potential to attain awakening, but I think logically, and this is just my opinion based in part on the Chinese canon, I think we must say it's possible for some beings to never get out. However, thankfully, at least in your immediate circle of rebirth, if there are however many beings who are regularly taking rebirth around you in a sort of, you know, who knows how many of us are sort of so closely tied in terms of rebirth that we continue to take rebirth near each other in one form or another over and over again. If one of us gets out, then the entire immediate circle benefits because one person, one being in the network of people that are close to us are now actively working in that immediate network of cause and effect to get people out of the problem, to get other sentient beings, not just people, of course. And so this creates an interesting dynamic in terms of motivation. One is the opportunity for you to get out and for you to attain realizations, incredibly precious. You should take this opportunity because it might never come again. It has the potential to never come again. However, when you're on the path also and you're not just concerned about yourself, there's a reason for you to go further because there's two destinations, right, in Buddhism. Well, there's three, but two main destinations. There's nirvana, that's an abiding nirvana, where you simply rest in your own final nature after death and attain unbelievable, peaceful, blissful state of existence that is perfect for your own needs forever. The other is that having broken the causes of suffering completely, you then, out of compassion, arise out of that condition and enter into non-abiding nirvana. So you're no longer remaining in a solitary state of peace, as they would say in the text. You now have a non-abiding state of peace where the mind and the internal conditions absolutely perfect for you, but through compassion now, not just out of compulsion because of karma and so forth, your past actions, but out of abiding compassion for the situation in which all sentient beings find themselves, you continue training until you have every single capability that's beneficial for others. Every single internal capability, you perfect it. Every single thing that can be removed that's negative or harmful or limiting, you remove it until you have all good qualities and you removed all negative qualities. And that condition we call, in the Mahayana tradition, we call Buddhahood or Samyak Sambodhi, the unexcelled, complete, or full enlightenment. So you have to attain nirvana either way. Then the question is, once you've attained once you've broken suffering, in your own case, completely broken the process of suffering, do you enter into an abiding condition that's just perfect for you? Or do you, out of deep compassion for other beings, do you carry on and perfect what can be perfected for the sake of others? And if you go that way, then again, this causal web in which we find ourselves, you can then benefit all of these beings. Uh, I don't have a next Q&A on the calendar yet. I usually do those on the fly. I don't have ability to do call-ins at the moment. I generally just do it by text, but you, Anglican, you're welcome to join the Discord server if one of the moderators will put that in the chat, or one of the regulars if they can put that in the chat. You're welcome to join the Discord server and ask questions there, and or we can just hop on the phone and talk, which I do quite often. Okay, my friends, I think I will wrap it up here. I think that's all the questions in the chat. Okay. All right. Hope to see you again very soon. Stay alive until I do.